This is a work session this evening going over the Associated Student Body accounts, accounting controls, and revenue sources. We're trying to get in compliance with Iowa Statute 33705 and 33357. So I know it's nice out and everyone wants to be outside, but the board would like to have some more information on, all of us are new, and we would like some more clarification on information on revenues and expenditures and just seeing where the money's going, and we had some questions. So, we have 17,000 bosses, so in Jim County, so we answer to the public. So we would like to have some more clarification on how the process is. Board members, we do have some questions, but does anybody would like to go first? And
so I would like
how would you like to go about that?
We actually sat down and kind of went through the questions, but also organized it in an order so that it would make some sense, because otherwise it's pretty random and I think you would go nuts. So we've kind of put that in order process we want to go through. I think it'd be good though if we had people introduce themselves first, especially those at the table, but others, so everybody just knows who they are. I just think that's going to be important. So.
I'm Wade Carter. I'm the principal at Emmett High School and have been for the last 10 years.
I'm Kim Torres, and I was the bursar at Emmett High School in the last decade.
Brandy Marquez, current bursar, started January of 18th. Cheryl Lemonian, business manager, been for 23 years.
Going this way? You want to? Sure. Okay.
Josh Peter, trustee. Terry Jones, trustee.
Ronnie Weeks, trustee.
Jefferson Jenkins, trustee.
Bill Hamilton, trustee.
Jody Harris, trustee.
Heather Vaughn, clerk and administrative secretary.
And there are some other people that, if you have questions that are here that can help answer some questions, some people probably just watch, but help answer questions if you'd like. Do you want me to introduce them? Have them introduce themselves. Okay, I
Go ahead.
Chuck Alexander, teach science at the high school. This is my 18th year.
I'm Stu Peterson. I'm the 7th year Spanish teacher, and then the newly hired, as of last year, girls varsity basketball.
Chris Roper, with counselor at the high school for like 9 years now, and I'm also a football coach.
Katie Bowden, I teach 9th and 10th grade English. This is my 2nd year.
Daniel Bowden, community member.
Nikki Carter, community member.
Robin Wilson, science department head, been here 4 years.
Michael Bruni, I'm the math department head. I think I've been in the district for 16 years.
Deli Burrell, I'm head secretary at the high school. I've been there for 4 years.
Rich Hargett, first year's head football coach and PE teacher at Emmett High School, 21st year coaching football and serving public education.
Clark here, committee member.
Gavin Watson, athletic director at the high school, first year.
Jonathan Wright, assistant principal at the high school, 9 years, 14 total.
Cindy Roberts, director of curriculum, started in the district in 1995.
So I've got a couple handouts to you to begin with. I'm going to start, and I'm going to turn this all over to these people next to me. But I just wanted to kind of cover the law. 33705 is a law that's been around for a long time on activity funds. Some of the questions you ask, you can read it, but on paragraph 3, it says the treasurer of the district. So let's talk about who the treasurer of the district is. That's Cheryl Lemonian is our treasurer for the district. And she shall provide accounting procedures for the receipt, deposit, expenditures, and withdrawal of such monies, and procedures for monthly reporting to the Board of Trustees on the transactions, assessments, liabilities, and fund balance for each fund. So one of the things that she does, and I will say that she will say, well, I didn't create all these things, because these have been created over the years with great staff and working with our auditor, quite frankly, to improve processes and go through that. And Kim Torres can explain that later as we get into that, but to have those processes that we do. She does also, the high school and actually all of our schools report monthly to her, so they provide the report. And I handed out to you the document that was actually in the February board packet, which was that monthly report. Okay, so that's the report. You'll notice it starts with the high school and has I think a kind of reconciliation report, and then it goes through and looks at all of the accounts, funds for the high school, and then there's a bank statement in there for them. So that gets reported to the treasurer every month, and from that. Boards in the past, and this board had said that they would like to not necessarily review that every month, and so we did it on a quarterly basis, but the board can decide how often you want that report. That's your choice as a board member. This law doesn't require you to look at it monthly. It does require a treasurer to have those procedures. That's actually what the law says. And the board gets to decide what you want to do. So that's a decision for the board perspective. Another is, and I point this out on number 5, is that that's a paragraph that actually allows the board to do what you would like to do with these funds and the reporting and accounting process. So nothing in the section limits the power of the board is basically how that starts out. So you guys can decide if you wanted to change anything or do anything or how you want that process to go. So that's basically what that law is. The next thing I handed out to you is actually our policy, which is our activities funds policy that we have. First part of that activities fund policy is pretty close to law. In other words, part of it, if you read the paragraph, you'll find the paragraph over there in the law too, as you go through it. But then it goes through a whole series of sections. So general activities, it defines what general activities could be, the purpose, and then it finds the fund distribution. So these funds are dispersed at the discretion of the building principal. And it goes on through, and I'm not gonna read all this, but I think if you're interested or if there's a question comes out throughout it, we can jump over and take a look at it. For example, athletics and athletic activities, it provides the definition, says the purpose of the funds used to promote athletic programs of the student body and the fund disbursement of these funds are dispersed at the discretion of the athletic director and the building principal. So each one of those kind of defines who's involved with it, who signs off on that, the processes. And this crew is going to show you all of those details and processes that they have in place and have put in place. I think, and we've changed them over the years as we learn stuff and work with our auditor and say, we need to fix this and improve it. And it's the nature of these jobs. I mean, they're probably never quite there. We're always going to make improvements as we go through that. Any high-level questions on those two sections before we get into details? Yeah.
The funds are dispersed at the discretion of the athletic director and the building principal in case of athletic activities. Does that mean those are the two signatories on the checks?
No. There are 3 individuals at the high school that can sign checks. There are 2 individuals that have to sign every check. And who are the check signers? The principal and
myself, Mr. Wright, the assistant principal, and Brandy. The only 3 that can sign.
So they're the only 3 that can sign check. 2 have to
2
sign
of those
the check.
have to.
It's actually like even for the board, we have a couple of individuals that can sign that don't. Just in case somebody isn't around or on vacation or something, they can do that. So it does require
actual signatures or are they signature stamps?
They're actual signatures.
The old fashioned one?
Yeah.
the old fashioned way. As a matter of fact, the deposit slips are still the old fashioned way too. Randy can explain that as we go through this. Other questions? Great question.
On the first page of this document, 838, activity funds, it's talking about the signatures and sounds like we have the designees and possibly a board member or somebody designated by the board, or have we designated somebody by the board previously?
The board years ago designated that these, in all the buildings would be signed by your building principal and the business manager. So a little more fancier at the bigger high school. When you get down into little tiny schools, it's, the secretary. I mean, that's what it is. But they've been designated by the board.
If the board wanted to be micromanager, they could go in and sign it if they wanted to.
Only if you wanted to have to show up every day to sign checks.
I understand.
Which is what you would have to do at all the buildings. Well, honestly, Sweet Hole, they don't sign very many checks. We were talking about that today. If you look at some of their reports, you'll see at the beginning of the month, it's the same balances at the end of the month on the little tiny school, but not at the high school.
Right. Where do you store these funds? Are they in a bank account? Are they?
We're going to go through all of that. It is a checking account. There is a checking account that it's stored within. But we're gonna actually talk about all those pieces and how that's done as we go through it, so.
So in your packet, these abbreviations will be in your,
I'd have to see.
it'll be described.
I'll have to see it.
Probably.
To retain that.
We don't know what
you're looking at. Yeah, there's, she's looking at.
It's like the
Second
slash JV. I'd say junior varsity, but I know it's not right.
I'd have to see what you're. I don't know what.
Looking at the bank statement.
Oh, at the tops?
The reconciliation report.
Which one,
No,
huh?
that is general ledger.
It's a general
Yeah.
ledger.
Okay, so what are you looking at?
Yes,
Where-
receipts.
Oh, that's money coming in.
JV doesn't mean junior varsity though.
No, I don't know what that means.
That is just something on our
On
EPES accounting system. I don't actually know what that
I'm
stands
gonna
for.
hand out this general ledger is the actual one that you're gonna be working off of. This was a couple months ago, so,
Yes,
The one
this,
she has is a couple
or
words.
do you have the one?
I have,
You have the
This is up
official,
to
so
date.
let's hand that
Yeah.
one, so we're all looking at the same general ledger. Because I handed out the packet from February.
and I do this every month when I send in our bank statements. This comes to Cheryl.
Okay, so let's turn it over to Wade and just, we're gonna start with just a little history and then job roles, so you understand, okay, who's responsible to do what? And then we'll get into procedure. That's kind of was the process that I thought would make some sense out of this whole thing.
And I will enlighten you, but I will tell you at any time, Kim and Brandy will be jumping in and explaining things because they are the experts for me that I have hired to put in a position. I want to back up for just a second and I want to talk a little bit about history. So about 20 years ago, the auditor came in and at the time, for example, our athletics, those coaches would have their accounts in their own, they would go down to the bank themselves and open their own bank account for their money. The auditor came in and said that was kind of a common practice throughout several areas, not just Emmett. The auditor came in and said, no, all money must be run through the school. Booster money, fundraiser money, everything must be run through the school. And so at that time, we made all those coaches bring that money in and we created the accounts. I was not the principal there at the high school then. I was a VP over at the junior high. But we brought all that money back under the umbrella of the school district for tracking and those kind of things.
And may I say, that's our procedure for all of our schools now. Every now and then, somebody comes in and says, well, I want to create a parent group, go out and do some fundraising. Unfortunately, if they do that, put it in their own account, there is no accountability to it. So all of these accounts are audited and through a process, and honestly, if you look at fraud, not too many years ago, we had a group that's a neighbor to us over here that some parent said, well, I got this little account, but I need 50 more bucks, pay the bills. So that's why you need a system to stop.
As we go along, we'll be handing out some of the paperwork that we use actually with our coaches and our teachers. And our teachers that are here can explain to you also if they want to request money and those kind of things, the steps and the procedures. They're all educated through my bookkeepers on how to do that in that process. So, like we said earlier, really there are technically only 3 administrators that can approve a requisition and sign off on that requisition, which has to be done before it goes to the bookkeeper to write out a check. And that is myself, Mr. Wright, and Mr. Watson as the athletic director. If it's something to do with athletics, he has the authority to sign off on that. Our coaches and our advisors, you want to hand out the responsibilities and procedures form? I'll go through the process in which they meet with our bookkeeper, especially like board members, new coaches have to come in and sit down with our bookkeeper and our bursar and go through the process and what they have to do, how their money works, how they can get their money and access to their money. So that form is given to them so they understand that. And then for regular staff, it's a yearly, we talk about it in the beginning of the year, our staff meeting. When we talk about the budgets and so forth, we review that process. Everything has to have a signature. The second paper I'm gonna give to you is what we call our requisition request form. This is what the teachers use or the coach uses to request funds. Or, yes, or it could be a student. If they're,
So you're jumping ahead, I think, you might want to come back.
did it? Okay,
That's what we're talking about, but you might want to talk about, let Randy and those talk about.
okay,
Go through the roles.
okay. So, Randy, do you want to talk for a second, kind of tell them what you do with your,
Like when I meet with the coach, as far as this.
I would talk about your overall role, what do you
Okay,
do
so
during the
when
day?
the coach is hired, they come in and this is the paper I go over with them and tell them that until I give them this form that you have in your hand right now, this requisition form, and tell them they cannot request, they cannot order, they cannot buy anything without having this form filled out. So it says, no order shall be made without acquiring a purchase order from myself, the bookkeeper. No purchase order will be issued without the assurance of a positive balance, so they have to know how much is in their account. And no refunds will be made without receipts. They have to have receipts. And if you do not follow this protocol, I do not have to pay the bill. You cannot go out and order stuff on your own and then come in and say, oh, I want this paid. This is the protocol. You have to follow these in order to, that ensures that the funds are there. You just can't go out as a coach and buy whatever you want and then come in and ask for, or to be paid for it.
I'm gonna stop you right there. So I want to explain her job a little bit more. She basically handles all of the money. So if a student comes in and wants to pay a fee, he will come back, meet with her, she will collect the money, write him a receipt, enter it into our accounting program, and enter it into our student management program at the Infinite Campus. If Brandy is not available at that moment, my other secretary, Dally, can write a hand receipt for them. We'll collect whatever it is, what it's for, give them a receipt back, then we'll give it to Brandy, usually within minutes. She might be tied up with somebody else or whatever, and so forth. Brandy also does all the money boxes, preparation for money boxes. She writes out all the checks. She handles everything that we have with, yes, with money. Purchasing, everything goes through Brandy. Before that, it went through Kim.
Can I just say, her title is bursar, meaning protector of student funds.
Okay.
You have to get through her to get to the money, okay? She knows that she's responsible for the entire umbrella, and she takes it very, very seriously, okay? So her job is to protect the fund. She is the stopgap for the coaches, for the students, and for the principals.
Terry, you got your hand up.
Is this just for the high school or the whole district?
Just the high school.
This is a secondary program.
For you three, a few years ago, the gray football jerseys, did that coach circumvent this form? Because I knew
Explain further,
I
because
knew
that's
that,
me.
okay, I knew there was an issue with
There's
those.
always an issue with excitement and stimulation and winning.
Right.
With color or buying process?
I guess both.
I have no authorization on color, but the coach did not get his money unless he had it and it was pre-authorized. And that's not to say there aren't individuals, people who work in the community that sell things illegally. We have no authority over that other than to have the policeman talk to them.
Are you talking about like copyright or?
Copyright, that is what I'm talking about.
Like Albertsons and Walgreens?
Albertsons, they send us money. We have a contract with them. Everything that sells, the percentage of the money goes to the high school.
Yeah, I guess the nature of my question is I know there was some scuttlebutt regarding those jerseys.
Yeah, so one of the calls I get the most is on tradition and school colors, sticking within the school colors. And to not be offensive, a lot of our older community gets really upset when we don't.
Yes, we do.
I wasn't gonna point her out, but
Yes, we
when
do.
we don't have traditional colors. And so, when that happened, I agreed to let us try that, but I knew I would catch some heat. And so those uniforms were basically used as a celebration uniform. They weren't worn on a regular basis. It was on for special
What was the
occasions.
basis of your question?
Oh, I'm just wondering if in that particular situation, the coach circumvented
No,
the process.
no,
Okay.
that is impossible. You cannot access
Okay.
funds in circumvention. You just can't.
Well, I mean, yeah, just from a.
I don't know if you know me, but no.
No, I just saying that from a community aspect, the information we're getting is those kids were not going to be allowed to wear those jerseys because it hadn't ran through the proper channels, and they just kind of showed up without asking.
They didn't show up, but my coach didn't make it real clear.
Okay.
He jokingly showed me a jersey and said, "What do you think of our new jerseys?" And I go, "Ha ha, not funny," because I knew what I was going to catch. And the next thing I know, that he had gone through and.
Do you remember when they put red in the uniforms?
Well, I played in navy blue. I mean, if that wasn't the most.
There you go.
And
Yeah.
Mr. V wanted to look like Detroit Lions.
Sometimes people will purchase things that they probably, the process we're talking about today is how we manage the funds. There will certainly be controversy about what things are purchased and some of that that'll never end. I mean, that's kind of the nature of what.
I just thought the timing was right to ask since we were covering this forum.
But the requisition is a process that they have to have signed to do that.
Yeah, it had to be approved by me to before anything happened.
Okay.
Bursars or bulldogs?
What's that?
Bursars or bulldogs?
Especially
If we are not bulldogs, we go to jail.
DAWGS.
Jail.
The second person that has some input, and like I said, is Mrs. Coral over here, who helps Brandy with some of the, for example, counting the boxes. We have two people always count the boxes and sign off on the boxes. A lot of times she'll be the second person to count and confirm the amounts and so forth on her. So she plays that role also.
Do you want to go over?
Let's start with going over the software
Yeah.
package first.
Okay, so.
Just talk about that a little bit.
Right.
That would be important. And then go over that next part. What is your cash box?
So the computer program, and I'm gonna let them talk a little bit more about this, that we use is called EPES, which is a program designed specifically for schools to track our money. And that's where this report comes from, is that program itself, the EPES. It is an audible system, and I will be honest with you, there's really only now two people that know how to run it, these two. I have no clue.
Why would you?
Yes,
I
that's,
wouldn't allow him to
Right.
log into the community. We wouldn't allow you to log into our account. It's not.
and it will reconcile the bank statement each month. It provides documentation for review for auditors and so forth. What else would
We
you?
can pull every report. I mean, every penny that goes through there goes through that system. So we can pull reports for everything. There's a paper trail for everything. And it all goes, when the students pay their fees, it just doesn't go into Infinite Campus because it is tracked in Infinite Campus, but then it's also, everything is through this computer software.
Then you're saying everything, that means
Every penny.
all the student accounts and all of
Correct.
these.
Over 100 if you'll look.
Yeah, like that, I looked
All
at the
of
list,
these.
yeah.
Does everybody understand what Infinite Campus is?
Not exactly.
Okay, Infinite Campus is our student management system. So if you were to come in and say, I need my grandchild to check out, I will go into Infinite Campus. I can look at his schedule, I can look at grades, I can look at if you're on the contact list. It's got a wide range of things that I can look at. In there also has a section for fees, what they call fees. So if you were to come in and say, hey, I want to pay my grandson's pay-to-play fee, I can actually pull it up and make sure that you haven't already paid it. Because sometimes when you pay at the beginning of the year, people fail to remember that. So that's our student management system. The EPES system is strictly for our accounting. So just to clarify that. Okay. Let's talk for a second about revenue processes. So, for example, money boxes, and kind of go down that.
So when I start a money box, I fill out my own requisition form. And I put right on there, it's startup box, it's coming out of athletics, it's this form, the requisition form. I put right on there, yes, that it's coming out of athletics, it's a startup box, what the sport is, and exactly how much is in there. Then this form is what goes in every cash box for everything, a club, it doesn't matter what it is. It has the event that's going on, the date, how much cash is in to start the box, whoever's working it is supposed to sign it, and then it tells you exactly how much is in there in ones and so forth with the total. Okay, so this is in every single box.
At the end of, for example, at the end of a game, then the money boxes are collected, and usually those are I'm gonna back up for one moment here, so I can explain my ticket takers. My ticket takers are Kim, Brandy, Dally, and a couple of other former retired employees from the district. So they're people that I handpick. Somebody can't walk in off the street and say, hey, I want to volunteer, I want to be a ticket taker. It has to be somebody that we know, we trust, you know what I'm saying? So we take that very seriously. So when we talk about money boxes and, for example, games, a lot of times these ladies from the start, from building the box to counting the box and everything in between the boxes is all done by them. Okay, so just so you understand that. At the end of the night at an activity, when they shut down the gates, and we don't go to the very, very end of every competition, you know, like we'll go into the third quarter and then we'll shut the gates down because the majority of the game is there. That money is collected and locked up then in the office. There is a box for concessions. I'm going to point at Ronnie because Ronnie's wife does a lot with concessions.
We know all too well this business.
Right. So usually though, that's one of the last boxes we get. Concessions, the ticket ladies have got theirs that are locked up in a secure place. And the concessions will usually come to one of us when I say one of the administrators that is on duty. We have an administrator on duty at every single event. Okay. Now, when I say that though, it could be also an advisor. So for example, last night we had Powder Buff, you know, Powder Buff's girls, Powder Buff is boys in volleyball. Mrs. Wilson was the administrator on duty that night and it all went through her. We'll collect that box. So if I get that box, let's say at a football game, and I'm still in the middle of cleaning up and finishing up, I will lock that box in my pickup until I've got everything done. Then I will take it up to the front of the building and lock it up in the office where it's protected. So they're always locked up at the end of the night in the office. Just make sure I get everything
And
in
that's
here.
whoever the administrator. Sometimes
Right.
it's Mr. Wright, sometimes it's Mr. Watson. If I'm working, I take it straight to the office and lock it up. So it's whoever is the administrator in charge that actually goes and locks it in the office.
What about the counting of the money?
It gets locked in the office, and then the next morning, I come in, I count the box, and then the head secretary verifies the funds. So there's two of us. And on this form, there's two signatures every time it's counted. So I count it first, and then she counts it. If it's
So it's
a
reconciled
booster,
the next morning?
the next morning. We don't stay and do it that night.
And sometimes may have 3 signatures.
Yes. Like
Some of the boosters will count it and they'll sign it, fill it in and sign it that night too. So it's on that paperwork and then they'll recount it
But we
again in the
still have
morning
our same
still
process.
and go through that process. So minimum 2 signatures, sometimes 3.
Correct.
But it's counted and then locked up, is that?
Yes.
Okay, and so.
So,
No,
no.
it's locked up.
It's
locked
locked
up and
up,
counted.
then I count it, and then it's put into the till and goes into the computer. So every day I have to empty my till and account for all the
Yeah.
money funds that have been put in. that
When
day.
she's doing that, so like today, we had a baseball and a softball. Those boxes are currently in the office, because that's what we were doing prior to this. She will enter it into the account 200, which is athletics, and the sub-account baseball. So it all drops into the same account, the account that pays all the bills for athletics. Am I making sense? Does that
Yeah,
answer what you're looking at?
I'm just trying to get a trail of
Okay,
possession
what you're
here.
seeing, when you're seeing like down here, football, softball, all that, those are boosters.
But I'm trying to establish in my own head, when the money is collected, then it's locked at that point
It is,
until the next morning when it's counted.
that is correct. And
So
then
it'd be-
it's,
So it'd be locked at the, whatever stand is taken at the.
well, no, it's
locked
locked
in
in the
No,
office.
it's locked in the
In
office.
the, in the office.
The boxes are collected. Okay, administrator, those two games collected all 4 boxes. She took them and put them in the office. Tomorrow Brandy will take them out, count them and reset for the next game. And everything that's a profit goes into the till and entered into the appropriate accounts. And that tills when she makes her deposit.
When you sell tickets at an event, how do you reconcile the tickets to the patrons?
Okay, we don't do tickets. We don't do tickets, and there's a good
So How
reason.
do you know how much income is actual?
Well, so let me tell you, I think there's 24 or 26 4 and 5A schools in our league. And there's only 2 schools that we know that do tickets. Most, if you go to a game, it's done by stamp. And the reason for that, it is very, very hard to track. You cannot look at the crowd and say, did all these people pay? Because you have Idaho High School Activities Association cards that get in free. You have, for example, I have the little cheerleaders will come and perform at halftime and the parent will come. I don't charge the parent to come in and watch their child. And they usually come in the second quarter before halftime. And I don't micromanage them. I'm not, hopefully they're going to be honest and leave after their performance, but if they stay, they stay. And so you have activity cards for our students. You have the visiting team has cards. Family passes. There's a multitude of.
If you're a district employee.
But you have no
don't
way of
to
knowing
pay.
if you sold 100 tickets or 500 tickets to reconcile to the dollars.
Right. And like I said, there's only 2 schools that do that right now. So.
Yeah, I wasn't sure from a metric standpoint, and maybe that's not feasible or reasonable, but like a counter, that would go out with each
Well,
box.
but you still couldn't, because a
Still have to
senior
have
citizen is $3, an adult ticket is $6, an elementary
That was my
So
question.
there's
student is
so many
different.
different variables.
There's so many different, you'd have to have
You
like
have a-
6 or 7 different tickets.
You have
Yeah.
one car with 8 different
Now,
prices.
I've actually talked to some principals that at other school districts in West Ada and they tried it. And the problem is they caught too much heat. Because that slows down the process of getting, then you get these long lines and people get upset and
Did you go to state?
there's some, yeah,
I can't. It's
Okay,
been
so
too
if you
long.
went to state, they do a ticket thing.
Uh-huh.
Okay, we had to hire people specifically to pull the tickets. Okay, and then you had to keep the stub that was from the ticket to do the accounting, because when you do state, your accounting must be exact.
Mhm,
So it's the delay, I guess,
mhm.
and the time frame, and the expense of the tickets, and the expense of hiring someone to give the tickets.
Now, I will share with you a couple things too. And I'll share one that I did and then Brandy. So I had a gentleman that came, I happened to be watching the box at the moment. I think one of the ladies was using the restroom, showed up, pulled out his checkbook, opened up his checkbook and had no checks. He came from out of town with his family. I'm not gonna turn him away. He had no cash on him. Come in, he said, I will send you a check. He did. But I'm not gonna turn anybody away. Mrs. Marquez had an older gentleman that showed up and was $1 short. We're not gonna turn them away.
No.
I mean, we're not,
I'm not after that. I'm not nitpicking for that.
right.
I'm just trying to make sure that there isn't some way of having a fraudulent effort out there. I mean, somebody taking a ticket, if you miss 15, 20, $50, how do you know it?
Faith. faith, because we have these people, everyone that has worked there in excess of 20 years. Some of those ticket takers have been there 25 years. As a bookkeeper, we know what a box should have. And if it is light, we know it. And then we address the situation because, like yourself, you become accustomed to things.
Like tonight, we're playing Bishop Kelly. They travel well. We know that we're gonna have a large crowd when we play Bishop Kelly because they all travel well. Caldwell, they don't travel as well, which means they don't have many people come and support their team.
We will
So-
say if you have any ideas, we'd be happy to accept.
Well, that's,
Definitely.
so that's my question. So is there anything that we can do to make it better than what we already have? Is there anything in mind?
If we did a ticket system, I think it's gonna
Is there
require
any
for me to
ideas
have
that-
more people working.
It will
Yeah.
definitely require more people.
It'd just.
Yes,
Yeah.
because I'm gonna be honest,
They don't make money.
they don't make a lot of money doing this ticket takers. It's not like they're,
Boxes don't make money.
you know, I don't wanna make excuses that I don't expect them to work. I do expect them to work, but it would probably require maybe 2, maybe 3 more people.
At least.
You would have to change your system, so you'd probably have to have.
But if
look
you
at
have
what
ideas, we're open.
Boise State University does obviously more people, but they're selling most of their tickets in advance.
We've already
Tickets are
changed
selling
it multiple
on
times.
site, they are selling at a ticket counter somewhere else, and they go through and have electronic. What schools have found is that we do the best we can to make sure there isn't fraud, good people, good accounting practices, those types of things. But the cost of putting in those big systems for small gates is really cost prohibitive.
The other thing, Terry, or Mr. Jones, I'm sorry. Okay, keep looking at your nameplate. It should say dairy, but I.
Ooh, that works for me.
A lot of times at tickets, I have multiple people. So that in most cases, there's never just one person taken. There's usually 2 people there.
At football games, there's always 2.
You know, I want you people to understand, this is my second board meeting. I know nothing about what you, and don't be questioning me until I have
I think
feet on the ground and understand what's going on here. But you know, I've been in business for years, handling money from customers, and I know the temptation is there, and we're just trying to understand as a board, what do you do to mitigate that temptation? And you know, selling tickets is just one thing. What about all the other fees and things? You know, how do you keep track of it all and make sure that?
And we'll go through that with you. We'll go through that with you.
Your biggest risk obviously is cash. I mean, any cash business. That's
I have one, I assume our ticket takers are all paid, is that?
Yes.
It's required by law.
So
You
we're-
cannot accept a volunteer, and we must be employees of the, and been fingerprinted.
So you're fingerprinted?
We're
and-
fingerprinted.
We did background checks too and all that?
Oh, yeah, most of us have worked, like I worked for the district 25
So one of the
years.
things at the end of this, I'm gonna show you is the budget form, the 100 budget. So what we do is actually the high school reimburses the district, but we run those salaries through the interscholastic budget part of our budget forms. So they can be paid through.
They fill out a
We
time.
take taxes out of, you know. the
They
normal-
fill out a timesheet. Mrs. Marquez confirms the timesheet that yes, they worked on those dates with her, because she does the schedule, the scheduling of all the ticket takers.
So
And she brings it to me. We meet, I go through it, I sign off on it, then it's sent to the district.
So in every box, when you're taking tickets, you have to sign what you did, whether it was you kept score, you kept stats, you did the clock, you ran the gate, you sign that. This comes back to me in the box. Then I fill out the time card. I fill those out according to when you sign the paper, and then those Mr. Carter signs those, and those get turned in monthly for payroll. So that's how we track who's been working gates.
So,
Yes,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Oh, revenue off of gates, then, did I hear correctly? It goes into the 200.
It goes
Yeah.
into 200, that is correct.
And then it might be off topic. So say like a sport like football, I don't know the metrics
Yes,
of
okay.
which football, basketball probably draw more.
Until you get down to games that you lose money, soccer.
Yeah.
And
so that
is a question that I get hit with a lot.
Right.
Why does football not get all their ticket money?
Well, no, because it's got to even out.
Well, you have to remember, I have 4 or 5 sports that don't have tickets. Tennis, there's no ticket, there's no entry fee. Golf, there's no entry fee. Drama, there's no entry fee. Band, there's no entry fee. I still have to have money to support those programs. And yes, football and boys basketball are the two biggest.
But their budgets are larger too, right?
Yes, they are.
Yes,
So there's more money allocated.
Yes. Football is by far the biggest budget.
Because hundreds of dollars prior to a game ever kicking off.
So one of the
That's what
things,
you need to
just to kind of move us forward, because I don't want to be here all night, on the on the cash boxes, the other thing is we have to pay sales tax. Okay, so one of the things you'll notice is that, even on that one sheet, it says less sales tax, so
Yes.
you raise
130.
money, but we have to pay it, and that actually goes into a fund for sales tax. So all of the taxable revenue, and it seems like the state loves the taxes for lots of stuff, we have to pay sales tax. So we have to
Everything's
have to account
taxed.
for that also.
To go to a dance.
And that's
it's
account
taxed.
130 on the ledger.
And we just have 2 gates of football.
It depends on the
Depends.
game. Sometimes we will have a gate on the visitor side. We'll have 2 people on by the concessions, and we'll have up to 3 in the booth.
Sometimes more at homecoming.
Yeah.
than more.
We have to look at the game, who's coming, you know what I'm saying?
JV and Frosh games.
You've stood
2
in
games.
those lines, Jody. You
2
know how long
games.
they are.
Well, I didn't know the one, when we played the visitor,
Right,
they would check in at this end.
right. It's all.
And a lot try to, but we've had experiences where we get these huge lines. So we've been able to say, if you're a visitor and you're sitting on that side, you can pay over there. And
Did
we'll-
I
And that's
answer
at a
your-
varsity game, not
Did I
a
answer
JV.
your question? Are you
Yeah,
clear?
all my questions are clear
Okay.
so far.
So money boxes are not just gates too. There's a lot of money boxes for concessions or
Every day there's a money box for muffins.
muffins.
Juniors sell muffins to raise money for junior prom every single day.
Mhm.
So they've got a money box every day.
But the people at the ticket counter don't actually count it? Or
No.
do they?
No, they have.
No, the
No.
next day.
It's the next day.
It's the next
So
day.
they just bring a box of money to you and it's counted the next
The
day.
bursar's responsible for the county.
Well, I'm just wondering why you didn't
I'm not,
have them count it.
do you think
and-
they would want to sit out there with all those people and pull out all those 20s, 50s and 100s and,
No, it'd be in the
It would be-
concession stand after it's
so we don't
closed
stay that long.
Right, I'm just parlaying.
We would
off
have
of
to do it in public.
We can-
It would be very dangerous.
We can look at doing that if that's something that this board wants to recommend. I don't have an issue with that.
Well, it's still the people you handpick that are working the concession stand,
Right.
right?
And
Well,
you probably
Concession
also have to
stands
pay
are
them longer.
boosters.
That's
That's,
boosters.
that's.
It's gonna cost me a little more if I want them to stay longer to.
It just, no.
On average, what does a football game cost? Ticket or income wise, what does it cost to run a football game?
Oh my gosh.
Is it $100? Is it $500?
Hundreds.
Oh, no.
No.
So if it's a big football game, I may have as many as 5 ticket takers, and we pay about $47 per ticket taker. Okay, on top of that though, you have officials, and you would be shocked what officials make. For a big varsity 5 official team, it's anywhere between $300 and $400 for one night.
Really?
Yeah, it's
For
Here's,
one official or for the crew?
for the group.
Here-
Oh, okay.
So we pay our officials through Arbiter, and this is, that right there, those are a few of the receipts from games that we have,
That's just we didn't make
That's
it.
just an example.
it's an example.
So
In
let's,
one night.
do you have more questions on cash? I'm gonna push this forward because, and I want the questions, but I also,
Well, this is simple. This is, so being a part of this, there is a recommendation that I would make, and I appreciate everything that you guys do. I would like to see, as far as like if our athletic director is there at the end of the game, and I know you guys have all the cleaning up to do, you gotta take care of everything. There's been times that we've had to chase people down. That's the only thing I would like to see change a little bit, is that we're getting that money in there as quick as we can, getting it locked up. And does that make sense what I'm saying?
I think so, yeah.
So that, because there was a couple of times that we would have ended up having to bring the box home.
Are you talking concessions?
Yes.
Okay, I was.
Are
gonna
you
say
talking like football,
tickets.
basketball?
Well, any of
Okay.
it, any of it.
Gotcha.
Just more of a concern at the end of the game after concessions of,
And he's talking concessions, not tickets.
not tickets,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
concessions.
so in other words, the
But it's just-
administrators need to know, hey, go get that box first and then do some of the other stuff.
Well, it doesn't have to be in that order, but I just,
Yeah,
that thought there that we have that open money there, we have that open box there, it needs to be taken care of, it needs to be locked up. So, yeah,
Within a half hour window or something.
Are these boxes all locked or?
And
They're just,
no, they're not all locked.
they're just boxes.
Physically locked boxes.
Most of the time they are.
Yeah.
Then, like I said, if it comes to, I'm gonna talk football, because football, that's the only one where I will put it in my truck, lock it up for a short amount of time till I'm finished on the field. Then I immediately take it in, and rarely is it over half an hour.
And we can do
What
that.
he's saying is.
Then it's just having whoever is running concessions,
Concessions
make sure
people,
that they count it and get it done so that
Usually-
whoever is the administrator trying to clean up isn't just sitting waiting for them all night to finish what they're doing.
because I don't know how it is with football. I mean, well, we help with football too. It was more difficult,
Basketball.
but with basketball, I mean, normally it's shut down soon enough, it's reconciled. But I just, and this was previous to Gavin coming. I mean, it was way better this year than prior. But I mean, there was a couple of times we literally had to chase people down.
Right.
To get it put away. And so that was my only thought.
Well, on your concessions, how do you handle the inventory?
Okay, so I'm gonna stop you there for saying, no, I'm gonna explain it real quick. Concessions technically are the schools. I have never taken the concession money. I have allowed the boosters, if they have a booster club, to run the concessions, and that goes directly into their booster account. So that inventory is handled by their boosters, if that makes sense. They're overall.
You're just a repository for the cash.
Yes, that's all I am. So.
When I was a mag teacher, the FFA got that.
And Terry, or Mr. Jones, I'm sorry, I keep doing this.
Please keep doing it.
Well, I apologize. I came from a high school in Idaho Falls in which they paid a stipend to a teacher, and he organized that, and it costs a lot of money. And this
That's
is
what I
my,
was envisioning.
yeah, this is my way of helping the boosters and the programs. So not only the budgets do they get, but they get all their concessions. And if they do have a great concessions, they can make quite a bit of money in a season. So
are we going to explain how that goes out?
You have to understand
So
that
let's go through revenue, and then we're gonna talk about expenses in a second. So other revenue are things like, and you can go through this, pay-to-play fees. Go ahead and talk about what all the other revenue items might be.
I've got to find out where we're at here. Excuse me. Pay to play fees, so we have the district approved for the students to participate in activities. There is a $50 pay to play fee for every sport.
The form, he's handing out the fees that we collect for the school.
optional fees.
Optional fees.
Yes. Yearbook brings in a fee, parking passes. We charge for parking passes. Part of that is, the reason we charge for parking passes is we get labels for every car. So for security reasons, if we have a situation, we can look at that number, Mr. Wright can pull up on his phone and go, Wade Carter owns this car. And we know instantly whose car that is. Vending machines. I'm gonna say 10, 15 years ago, vending machines were very, very profitable for us. Coke, Pepsi had huge contracts with us. I think at one time the high school was getting roughly like $900 every other month. Then the government stepped in and said sugary drinks, all those things, and they put those restrictions, and that pretty much died. How much do we now? We have a vendor that brings in, but how much?
Every month it might be a little over $100 that they give the school.
Okay.
But so on this paper, the ones in blue, those actually go into our athletic account. The 200 account. The other ones all have their own account. Driver's ed has its own account, yearbook has its own account, PE, parking, they all have their own. Activity cards and activity fees go into that athletic account.
Are these accounts dedicated?
Yes.
So that group has access to those funds and that's all?
Yep.
Well, now, wait a minute.
No.
The when you call that the athletic accounts, called athletic
It's,
that's actually the account that is not dedicated to a specific group. It covers all athletics activities, those types
I
of things.
understand that from.
But the other accounts, if it says drama, that's a drama account, it can only be used on drama.
but if somebody comes in and says,
Yeah, it's
if you
like-
come to me and say, I want to donate $100 to this specific, it goes into that specific, I don't want to call it an account, but that's in the system. So that goes directly into that. So
Each
we can
account-
track that money.
Each account has an administrator, okay? The administrator of all of several, like the soccer account is actually the coach, okay? And that means those signatures from that administrator must be on these forms prior to any money being released.
And on the form, it actually says advisor instead of administrator.
And that would not be the check, but that would be on the requisition.
Yep.
Correct. Yes.
Other fees or other revenue sources that we get are facility rental. It's a small amount. We try and work with the community as much as we possibly can. For example, I have hunters Ed tonight. I don't believe they pay us anything
They do not.
to use our facility. It's something giving back to the community that we try to do. And then probably the biggest next one is our sign program. So if you come into the gyms, you see those sponsorship signs. That is done. We have a form that people can fill out, and then we pay for that, and that money goes into an account that we can use it wherever we may need it. So I'll give you a quick example. We have a four-wheeler that's probably close to 20 years old. It's dead. We can't fix it. We could fix it, but it would not be cost-effective to fix it. It is so old, and we've repaired it so many times. We are going to have to go out and purchase a four-wheeler. We have to have it for spring sports, winter, fall sports, all those things for using. So that may, for example, may come out of our sign money. A few years ago, I had to buy a mower. For baseball, they have to have a specific type of mower and stuff. Those are the kind of things that we use. When we tiled the ditch, I paid for the fencing. We had a discussion about how am I going to control and charge people to get in with no fence. And so I paid for a fence. So those,
Stop drowning children.
yeah. So there's just things like that those are things that we take on ourselves at the district or at the high school. Okay. All that can be tracked, all that through the EPS system. We can track any amount of that. Receipts are provided to anybody and students. And one thing that I will tell you is when you came in with your grandson and you paid a fee, Terry, when we enter it into the system, we enter it with your grandson's name on there. So we can tie it directly, we can show directly who that money was for and what it was for. On that.
Is that the same with all registration fees of any kind?
All right, that's why it takes so long. Let me think about how long it takes.
Those are also, like I said, and just remind you, they're documented in Infinite Campus. So we can pull that up and show. Infinite Campus is a wonderful program because it will show multiple years. It never goes away. So from day one that we had Infinite Campus, we have every year in there. Okay.
Excuse me, those receipts are all sequential, numbered sequentially?
Correct.
Okay.
That's a question. See, that's why I have to be here.
Yeah, it works.
Okay. Depositing funds, bank deposit slips are filled out and completed and reconciled with the EPS report. We have one checking account for all ASB and student funds. We have two scholarship funds, which are CDs.
And one is a CD, I double checked. One is a CD and one is an actual checking account. And these are examples.
Those are strictly set aside for the specific.
Yes, just for.
So they
that
run through
particular
us, but we
scholarship.
really have no control over those.
Those are shown in the audit separately as a dedicated scholarship.
Correct.
Yes.
Those are not in the.
I believe those, if you look too on the back of your,
It shows balances on there.
yeah, if you look at the back of your general ledger, scholarships.
So there's only two scholarship funds that actually are in separate accounts. All the rest of them are in the SB accounts and have a fund code. or an account.
So Paula Silkwood, a former teacher, passed away a few years ago, so that one is in our system as the Paula Silkwood scholarship.
These
Well, I
are
was kind of
not in
curious
that
why there was
report.
a separate account in there, and that's the reason.
Well, these were set up a few years ago, and I think they've tried to
Huh?
close
Those
them out.
will not be in that report,
Okay.
because they're independently held, they are not held in the checking account. She must go to obtain the scholarships separately to the bank
Okay.
and withdraw.
And then put them into that account.
Is that a board policy or is it a school, a state?
That's the way they were
requirement?
set up when, say, Mr. Riggs died, or, these people, that's the way they set them up.
So ASB fund accounts, that is our athletic and activity funds. Revenue from that is the gate receipts, the pay to play activity cards that comes into there. Just to give you an idea of the expenses that have to come out of there. Officials, uniform, supplies, equipment, paint. And when I talk paint, I'm talking field paint, which would shock you. Commissioner fees, we have to pay to be in the SIC. We have to pay a commissioner fee for every single sport. There's a different commissioner. We have to pay a certain fee to him. An arbiter fee and all those. A few years ago, we used to write a check every game for every official. And the SIC went away from that, which is wonderful. So now what we do is we pay a one-time, well, it's not a one-time fee. We pay in increments, but huge increments, like $5,000 or $6,000 will go into this, and then they will handle paying the officials. And it's, what is it called?
Arbiter.
Thank you.
And that's official.
Well, it all goes into the arbiter, and then the arbiter says, okay, Jefferson Jenkins was my softball official, and I pay him this amount, and then they send the check and distribute them out that way.
Do you sign off on their request to the SIC or something when they come out and officiate a game?
They have to sign, the officials have to sign in the money box.
And that was, I sent around an example of that, but I haven't received it.
She has to look at the arbiter
So
page
that
and agree that they were there.
Okay. So that confirms who they were and how they are, so then when we can match our report with the arbiter's report to make sure it's.
To make sure that they're showing up and doing their job.
Yes.
I needed it to record, same with the other one that was going around.
And that commission fee helps pay for this administration of those payments, is that?
That helps pay for the person that is kind of the overall head of it. So they work with the ADs to do the scheduling, and they build that, they assign officials to it. If there is
They write the checks, keep the accounting, that's
Yes.
all part of that.
Yes.
fee. Okay.
Do you know do we pay those funds per sport? So like if you pay out that $9,000, whatever, for football, and then they come back to you during basketball?
They'll contact us, the arbiter, the official.
Yeah.
The arbiter will contact us and say, okay, your account is down. And we'll know then, okay, we need to send in more. Each sport gets a budget, which is paid out of this account. I've tracked that from day one when I came in. Now I want to talk for a second about athletics, because when I came to Emmett High School, athletics was $8,000 in the hole. And so I had to step in and I had to make some severe changes. We restricted some budgets, we cut them back. There was no uniform rotation, so we put every sport on a 4-year uniform rotation. So, for example, one of my biggest uniforms is football. So that year, maybe football and cross country will get uniforms. The next year, it could be volleyball and both basketballs. And we give them a set amount of money that they can use. Now, I don't pay for Nike. I don't have the luxury of paying for Nike. I'm going to use Coach Peterson. He likes Nike. So Coach Peterson knows the amount of money he's going to get from me for uniforms when he wants. If he wants a more expensive uniform, he's going to fundraise for that. And he will submit that money to us, and then we will pay the bill when we know that all the money is there, and with our portion and his portion, we will pay the bill. Okay.
Wait, just one quick question. This is just for the high school athletics. It has nothing to do with junior high athletics.
No.
It's a separate deal.
We would like to charge them money, but no. No, this is just us.
Okay, I assume that.
So they're on the same, well, they have the same computer system, right, not using the same background.
So I want to just,
Mr. Alexander.
I was just wondering, it's all interesting, I maybe am more familiar with some of this information than some of the board members, but a lot of that details removed from a coach. And I wanted to say something about my 13 years running a program, raising money, and dealing with the office. And could I do that?
I don't have a problem with it. Go ahead.
So I've been the varsity cross-country coach for 13 years. I was hired by Steve Batia and Mike Harris. But for most of the time, it's been Wade and a few different athletic directors. And it was Kim, and then it was Brandy these last few years. We've always raised money for our program, my kids and parents. Back 10 or 12 years ago, money was tight all over the place. We bought our own team uniforms with money that my kids raised. Those are owned by Emmett School District. We did not send those with those kids at the end of the year. How would you do that? 4 grades raised that money. Then we got on the rotation that Wayne started, which is roughly, I don't know, however many years, 4 or 5 years. Every 4 years you have a chance, do you have a need? They come to your team. Since then, we've got uniforms once through that way. Money's gotten better. There's more, we have a better financial situation. We've never had any problem raising money. It's always been clear in my 13 years as a head coach that when money's raised, it goes to the high school office. You don't get to keep some, carry it around, and spend it. That way it's convenient. No, it comes to Kim and or Brandy now, and they put that in the account, and then you fill out a requisition and request that money when you need. And it's always worked fine. I'll give you an example. This last spring and into the early summer, I had parents giving me money. They'd come to me and they said, what do we need? Well, there's always a few things we need. And one thing, a new canopy, a tent with Husky logo, and you put it up and your kids get shade or out of the rain at cross country. And I said, that would be something we could use. And they said, okay, let's do that. It's like, okay. So $250 comes into the office. It's mailed to Brandy. $250 gets handed to me by their kid. And so the next thing you know, we've got $1,500 been handed in by a couple saying we're going to get a new canopy. So I need to act on that. So in the summer, last summer, I started looking and doing the research, trying to get a good product and wisely use their money. We only have a few $100 left in our cross-country account. We haven't started raising money late summer yet. We find a deal, but it's going to run out. So I put together the best package I can, and it's just a little under $2,100. So then I go to Brandy and the district and the AD was changing at the time and Wade, and this is what we're looking at. This is where the money has come from. This is the money I have. This is the money parents are giving, and we'd like to make this purchase. And then they're like, okay, we think that's a good deal. And I think at the time I was about $80 short. So actually, we didn't have the money. I could have just got it out of my pocket, or I could have went and maybe asked a parent directly, but I just kind of paused. And I would say as kudos is the way I think it should work, but it's always easy to say somebody else's money. But the office handled it, said, let's do the deal, because if we wait, it's going to cost us more. We're going to lose this deal. And we have money that comes to our program every year from the district. I don't control that. I don't make a request for a certain amount of money. Wade has, that's his job, is to figure out how much can we afford. That football needs a lot, cross country doesn't need much, but they need some. And that was just taken care of. I've never had problems getting my money back. It's always been clear to me, all 13 years I've been a head coach, that it goes to the office. Whether it's cash we make at a car wash uptown, or whether it's a check, it always goes there. And that way, there's accountability as to where this money is and who's spending it and where are the receipts. And so I just wanted to give you an example of one sport.
So if I understand you correctly, you never had a problem as far as if you raised money for a specific project of having that money there when you wanted it?
never. And many times what I'll do, because I lose track, I'm doing teaching stuff, so I'll reach out to the office and say, hey, could you send me my balance? Because I lose track, because I'm spending and putting it in there, and then a page will come out and a TA will bring it up later in the day, and this is what my balance is. And I've never, in 13 years, I've never had to go down and go, hey, wait a minute, this isn't making sense. So, you know, that could happen honestly too, but I've never had that. I've never had an issue.
Mr. Jeter, if I may help with that, you can go to the office at any point and you can request that. I requested that from Brandy, and within like 3.5 minutes I had it. And that is an itemized report of what came in, what went out, what you have on balance. They can produce, it's all an open book.
For
Specifically.
whatever specific
Yes.
accounts you
Exactly.
want. Yeah.
So my entire football account is wide open to me at any time. I can see all the transfers. It's all tracked by date. And you can, every head coach in the district can have that provided to them in minutes. I brought mine to see that.
Just so you understand too, I'm gonna get here a little bit. Let's talk fundraising for a minute. The only part I have to do with fundraising is I sometimes have to monitor fundraising and what they do. Fundraising has to be approved by 2 people. It has to be approved by myself and by ASB, the student council. Okay, the reason for that is, for example, donkey basketball is a huge money maker. Well, I one year had a walk-on coach. Donkey basketball had always been for this one sport. I had a new walk-on coach in another sport, and he thought he'd be kind of tricky. And he said, well, we're going to do donkey basketball, but we're not going to do it in April. We're going to do it in February. No, we're not going to do that. We don't. So we kind of just monitor that. But as far as fundraising and that money never comes to me. I never see that money. It comes directly to them. So a prime example, there was a fundraiser for scrap metal. Okay. We've got 4 or 5 checks that came to us directly from the scrap metal company to the school, which at the time was Kim, and she would enter it then into that sports booster club. Okay. It wasn't booster, was it? It was just went in football.
No, went into football, booster, and football.
Do you want?
Yes, please.
Okay, then the football coach and the booster president came to us and said, we need this. Great. On that actual fundraiser, Mr. Carter came up with an extra $5,000 because it was for new weight systems. And that didn't raise $7,000. That raised like
$3,319.64 were the checks that were given. We received no cash for metal at all.
They were all checks
They
through
were
the
all
company.
checks because they have to keep their accounting as well. Then it directly went out for $3,000, along with all these other fundraising from different groups and different organizations to purchase. So you can see it went from here to here.
I'm gonna show you this just so this is all the paperwork that we gathered. This is the purchase order form right here, which has my signature and is filled out. And then here's a copy of, not the entire check, but the stub of the check.
So you're just showing us what those funds went for that come in?
Yeah, I'm just
Right.
showing you just.
So
Now, you spent 14,000 for it, is
But
that?
that's, well,
That's
that's John.
Hmm?
That's what we spent on the way. Well,
Yeah, that's all right, I just turned
yes,
it. yeah.
it's, but it was
And you
collected
collected
by many,
37.
many groups,
Okay.
collected money for that.
So actually on this form, it tells you the football boosters put in 6,000. The metal scrap raised $3,319.64.
That's what
They took $1,666.80, and they took money from athletics. I misquoted, I'm sorry, $2,000 that I put to them. And then football personally put the football program added for a total of $14,580. So it's all broke down, who put what in, how much, and so forth. Okay. Now, the only other thing I'm gonna say on this, and I'm gonna use Mr. Hargett, and I'm teasing him. If Mr. Hargett comes to me with a request for an 80-inch, I need an 80-inch big screen TV for my football program.
Everybody does.
Yes, I might say, is that the best use of our money? And we'll talk about it. Can we do it with a 50-inch, which is a lot cheaper and But in the most cases, I sign off on what they're requesting because I trust the people in what they're requesting and what they're doing. Now, I will tell you, I will give you one example. We had a coach that came to Kim and I and had gone out and had not followed the process. And I covered the bill the first time, but I made it very clear to that coach, I will not do that again. If you do not follow the process and go through the paperwork process, I will not cover it again. Came in about a year later with about, I think it was $4,200 bill. I said, I'm not paying it.
I had actually called the company that he was going in. He's not actually employed by us. And he was going in and using our name and purchasing products he felt were needed.
But he wasn't a head coach either.
But he
No.
wasn't a head coach.
I'm saying
He
wasn't.
didn't talk to her. He didn't talk to me. He didn't even talk to the head coach.
He tried to put it in, the last time I signed was a month before I retired. And he knew I was not going to pay this. I'd already told the people that he purchased it from. They knew our protocol. So I said, I made him take our name off those bills and put his name on it. And I said I would be happy to give him a donation for his taxes.
I don't like doing that. But we have to have an accountability system in here.
That's
So
why
when
we
somebody
have
walks
money.
in and says, this, show me the paperwork, I have it. That's only happened one time with one coach, a walk-on coach, in my 10 years at the high school.
He tried without me telling you many times.
So,
Yeah.
okay. But we track down to the penny everything, and we can show everything where that money goes.
Which is why we have money.
Right. Rich Hargett, when he was hired, he was still in South Carolina. Mr. Roper needed to order some supplies for summer football. Mr. Hargett called on the phone to Brandy and I and said, I need to order this stuff. Can Chris come down and fill out the paperwork? And as long as you give us the okay, we're fine with that.
And I actually had him email me so that I had a hard copy that I attached to the requisition form to allow the purchase to be made. Because Mr. Hargett is the advisor on that account.
Okay, so I handed out a paper to you that looks like this. This is just kind of a rough estimate of give you a little bit of an idea of what athletic budget, how much that is. This year was about $20,400. Arbitrator for officials was between $22,000 and $24,000. Game management, we broke that down and estimated that out for when we had to make a change from 35 to more, and that's about $11,000 a year. So you can kind of see also on here things that we spend this money on. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the backside, it's at the top, but down here is examples of where that money goes. Where that money goes. Now, for me to start the beginning of the year, I need between $20,000 and $25,000 at the beginning of the year. So my balance cannot run to zero because we have needs. And if I don't have money in that account, because those fall coaches are going to need things before that. The winter coaches, the basketball, for example, they need to order their uniforms then.
Well, he's already working on that, right?
Right. So we have to have money to use to start the year, if that makes sense. So that's why I don't run that account down to zero.
Okay, excuse me, wait, Mr. Carter. You're saying that the balance,
Are you looking at the very top?
well, the athletic 2017, 2018 athletic account, the low point was 6926, is that what you're saying?
No, so
No,
we started with 35, and at the end of the year, after we paid all of our bills and everything, we had increased, we were at 42,000 something, so we had
Your
about
net
$7,000 profit. I'm
Your net
gonna call it
increase,
profit, I don't like that word because it's,
Well, net increase.
yes, there you go, thank you. Yes,
You have to understand that when we started with zero, and we had to fight because the administration at that time, like their coaches, just shop. We had not only started with zero, we started with debt.
Yeah.
And that's why the Bulldog and Mr. Bulldog, we had to fight really hard to even get ourselves back with credit and in balance. So you.
one other thing, just so you guys understand, your Uncle Mike and I at one point were brought in long before Mr. Rush and told you have to cut $100,000 out of athletics.
You don't have a program.
Well, we did it.
Oh,
We had to cut stipends, we had to cut budgets back, we had to do it, but the district was at that point where we had to do that. Last year, or this year was the first time in my, from the day I started at the high school, that my coaches' budgets were back up to what they were my first year. It's taken me time to build that up. But, and at one point, long before Mr. Rush, we got actually money from the district. The high school got, I think, around 28,000 for athletics, and I think the middle school, when I was there, got about 10,000 for athletics. That all went away. That's why pay to play had to come in. I don't like doing that. I will never deny a kid playing. If he can't pay, he works for me. You know, or I have coaches sometimes.
Is it a 35 a sport?
It's 50.
50.
It was 35 for quite some time, but when officials and other fees started increasing, we have to bring that to the board, and the board approved that change.
Yeah. And that's every sport except for several that don't pay anything, or is there some in between, or you said golf doesn't, and
Every
every sport still has to pay.
oh, they still pay the play, okay.
The only time that isn't in effect is if you have a student doing
That
two
was-
sports.
Golf is a losing,
Yeah, okay.
is a money losing sport for me. I don't mean that mean, but
Don't insult the golfer there.
well, it just because
What the difference is there's no tickets, or there's no sales.
there's no ticket sales. Yeah, and the first thing I have to do with golf is pay $500 to a course. To use the course.
If you personally have a student who wants to do two things at once, let's say they want to play soccer and football at the same time, you're only going to pay $50.
And we do have that.
Oh, okay.
Not
If
a
you're
lot, but we
having
do have
dual
that.
sport during the same season, it is only $50.
So it's $50 per season.
If you're playing dual sports.
If you're playing dual sports. Okay.
Otherwise, it's $50 a season.
And Bill, that happens in the fall and in the spring.
We have some.
Okay, let's talk for a moment about state events so that you understand, because one of the questions was a parent had asked, why do I have to pay extra money for my kid to go to state events? So I'm going to talk about drama this year. Drama came to me and said, listen, we want to go a day early. So we had a long conversation because that's another day that kids are out of school. I explained to her that this is what I'm willing to pay. I pay the motel room. I pay a food per diem per the kids. And then the last thing I do is I buy a really nice meal for every team and every kid and every coach. And so I put extra money into that process. And then the district pays the transportation. So when they came to me and said, listen, we want to go an extra day early, I paid the motel. I told the advisor, you'll have to cover the meals. I think that's fair. And so that's the only time I can think of. They are given an amount of money. When we sign them up for motels, we try and get them a motel that serves breakfast in the morning for free. We try and be as cost effective, but they stay in nice motels and so forth. So it is a lot of money. Now, the one other area that sometimes you might hear is charter buses. Why can't we take a charter bus? Why can't we take a charter bus? There's a procedure to take a charter bus. The district will only reimburse what it would cost them to send a yellow bus. Anything above that is the responsibility of that program. And I've helped programs when they've said, hey, we're short a couple $100 or we're short $500. Okay, I'll cover that $500 and we'll get them on a charter bus.
So you'll use that out of the general fund to help cover that?
Out of this, ASB and athletic. So that might be, for an example, it comes out of sign money. Okay. Audit. So I'm gonna talk for a little bit about the audit. We are audited every year, and I will tell you that I love how we audit. Here's the reason why. We have a room. We put everything in that room for the auditor. He comes in, he goes in that room, we shut the door, he goes through whatever he wants. So it's not like, oh, well, here, let us show you the bills we paid in July 15th. He goes through that audit, he picks that, he goes through everything. If he has a question, he'll come out and say, hey, Brandy or Kim, I'm not seeing this, or this isn't clear, explain this. They'll clarify for him. I've never had an issue with an audit.
He'll call up to 6 months. He's still auditing up to 6 months. He'll take the papers and he's putting them into his computer. He's scanning them.
Oh, okay.
And he will call as long as 6 months and ask you questions because he's excruciatingly thorough, as he should be.
He meets with me before he leaves. He will tell me any new trends that are going on or any things that they're seeing. So, for example, here's something to be aware of, Wade. And he and I will sit and talk about that. He'll usually include that in a report if there is something. But our audits have always come back clean and ready to go.
In the audit report, what is it, what heading is that under?
So if you look at the audit report, it's about on page 42. I meant to bring it, did I bring it out? And it's,
Fiduciary funds.
Fiduciary funds. He uses another term too, but it's fiduciary funds.
Yeah.
It'll
I was
actually
looking
say-
through it today. I had a hell of a time trying to figure that out.
If you get back to 42, it'll actually show
Yeah,
the,
I found it. But it just shows an amount in those funds.
it just shows an amount. in those
It doesn't talk about income or expenses or anything like that.
No, he just leaves the
So,
amount. I mean,
you know,
that's
what
what's
good
in-
is that? I mean, all we see is a bulk number.
Well, what the auditor is doing is telling you whether or not there are good internal controls, whether he's found any problems with it. So you read the pages at the front of the audit
I
report.
read through them all today.
What the audit report actually says, and that's what the auditor is doing. Do you have good internal controls? If he has a problem with it, that'll show up as a concern.
I gather in all these accounts, you have a little over $300,000 annually. Is that?
All
or
of
was
the
that
school
those?
accounts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the high schools last year ended at about 183, somewhere in there, in the audit report. And then, the
So
others.
what happens to these funds as you're a custodian of those? Do you invest those? Do you just leave them in
They're in a savings. They're not in a savings account. They're just checking.
So they're not
I
earning any
can't
interest?
invest your money. You see, because it does say 183,000 here, but you've got to understand that includes scholarships that must be available every year, that we have to follow the protocol of the wills, which we have.
That's only about $10,000.
Okay, and then you have to, I can't take the Bug Boosters money and invest it. So all we have is our operational money. Emmett High School only has operational money, which would be in the athletic department, signage. That money is used to purchase and give to these people.
Yeah, their account, we have a couple of sports that have upwards of 3 accounts. They have the account of the money I give them. They have the account for their fundraising that they do, and they have a booster account.
I wish we could invest.
Okay, that is, I call those working accounts. There's always money coming in and there's always money going out on those, through those programs. So I'm not gonna take that and say, hey, we're gonna invest it in a, whatever, I don't, those are working accounts, that money is changing on a regular basis. Sometimes faster than others.
What kind of cash do we keep on hand on just on an average basis? I know you probably fund all your cash boxes.
I keep $100 on my till. That's what I start with every day.
Sure.
And then the cash boxes that are there, those depend on what, like Mrs. Wilson's biology club, she has a box, she fundraises all the time. There's $100 in there. So that is available, it's locked up. Available for her to come in at any time and request to use that, but I keep $100 in my till.
Yeah, I just was
That's what I
curious.
start. That's what I start every
And we
day.
keep that secured somehow
Locked in a safe.
in the dome, which is really safe.
Okay, it's behind two different locks.
Yes.
We have an actual vault that's in a room, and then we actually have a room that has 2 locks on it that only 3 of us have a key to that room. Sadly, after 10 years, Mr. Carter still cannot get in the vault. I cannot figure out how to open that
It's
damn
not
thing.
very easy to get.
So, but we have multiple security systems in place for that.
Yeah, plus cameras.
Right.
Correct.
Right. That's a huge
Yes.
insurance policy.
We plan for the week And we make those deposits right away. So if Brandy has, I need 5 boxes this week and $100 in each box, she'll have those boxes ready to go. Any excess money is deposited immediately.
That's what I was getting at, basically.
Are you basically depositing money every day then,
I go once a week.
once a week?
Yeah.
Okay.
If I have a lot of checks that come in, then I will, like if a big fundraiser comes in, then I'll usually go do that deposit that night or the next morning, because I don't like to hold on to checks.
And it depends kind of on the time of the year. Registration at the beginning of the year, we make deposits every day.
Yes.
Because we're talking $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in one day. So yes, that we, yeah.
One other question, I know Wayne and I talked about the helmet issue. I mean, you mentioned at one board meeting that you're paying that, but.
I may have misspoke, so let me
District
clarify
paid
that
it.
for you. Okay, so,
He clarified it. but-
okay, so, and do you want to talk about it or you want?
Well, let me just tell you, when I
Okay.
came here, one of the things that, as we started to get our finances put back together as a school district, one of the things I was concerned about was safety, and helmets was a big issue, especially football helmets. And so one of the things I said is I don't want that to be a discretionary item that a coach or somebody would say, yeah, I think I better refurbish my helmets this year. And I'm not saying this coach would ever do that. I think he would kill me if we didn't refurbish them. But there's laws that we have to follow on that. And I said, I would like that to have a fund that we do that. So that's when we added 6,000 back to the budget. I don't think we've spent that much.
No.
Been running about 3,500.
We do not get a choice now on helmets. Every helmet is inspected every year now. And when the inspector comes in, he will go through and say, I can recondition, no good, no good, no good. And that helmet may look brand new, but it doesn't pass. So helmets are extremely expensive too. You range probably, what do our helmets run us for one helmet?
About $256.
And they can go as much as $450. So
What do we do with the middle school?
they have to go through the same thing.
I mean, we supply that too?
Same 6,000.
Are you saying the general fund pays for the helmets? Because I was at a meeting where you said it came out of this account.
Right, and I misspoke.
Okay.
Yes, so, but I want to say something to that, and this is why I may have misspoke. I do purchase helmets. So I've had a couple kids that have like a triple X or quadruple X head on them, and I don't have a helmet. So we have to special order a helmet. I don't run that through the district. I take care of that. We've had a couple, 3 or 4 over the last few years that we've had to do that. But we purchase the shoulder pads, the pants, the pads, the girdles, all the other stuff. That is through us and our football program. Okay.
And if I could interject something there, Coach Watson and I meet the Riddell rep, and we have nothing to say on the matter. And I have not had a say on that for probably the last 6 or 7 years, and it's great because under the old system, I had to go in and say, yes, I can put Clark Fear in this helmet, yes or no. Well, guess what happened? If that helmet's defective, they're not gonna sue them at high school, they're gonna sue Rich Harvey. So a few years ago, Riddell, they took it all away from us, and they basically made a policy where the Riddell rep comes in and literally looks at the helmet and goes, there's a crack, it's deficient, it's gone. And there's immediately a bill right there.
If you've watched the news with concussions and CTE and brain damage, and this has been a huge thing across the nation, and this is not open for debate anymore. This is what we have to do. So.
Yeah, and the Riddell rep pulls them, he tells us these are what you're losing. You have a choice, either do without, try to cannibalize parts, which we do, and then when you're down that number, here's your bill, you have to buy this many. It's pretty much non-negotiable.
They have to go back, they're on a 2-year rotation, so we'd have half our helmets went back this year for reconditioning, and the other half will go back next year. And the full life of the helmet's 10 years, and it's done.
They're still leather though, right?
You're not that old.
But what it really allows us to do is it allows us to look a parent in the eye and say, we're putting your kid in a helmet that is safe.
Right.
And if there's something happens with the helmet, it becomes a manufacturer issue. I'm not liable, the district's not liable, it is now a Riddell issue. It makes me sleep a lot better at night, because I didn't like having to be the one that said, yes, this one's good, and no, this was not. I'm not a helmet manufacturer. But it does incur a cost every year that won't go away.
So when I said that, I apologize.
Yeah, but I
misspoke.
and I knew
That's-
the answers. Well, since I got the bill to approve.
High school support, or, general fund support, the helmets, we talked about that. The salaries for the stipends of the coaches is paid through that. Also, there are fees with the Idaho High School Activities Association. There are fees for every sport. Your catastrophic insurance is paid through that. The district covers that cost. Your coaches' cards. Now, some of you have changed, and I apologize. Usually at the beginning of the year, we buy ISHA coaches' cards that will get you into things. But the board has changed so much, and I may be behind, and I apologize for that.
Gotta keep up.
Sorry.
So
That's the only perk you actually get in this job.
And the other thing is the transportation. The district covers the transportation. But even there, I want you to understand that Mr. Rush and I sit down with our athletic director, and we pretty much say, this is what we'll cover. We cover Baker to Mountain Home. If one of my teams wants to go outside of that, we try not to cover that. And I really encourage my coaches. Now, this year we were forced with one trip. It wasn't our decision. The league made us pick up a game in Jerome. So this year we had to go to Jerome, and Jerome will come to us this year. But other than that, we try and stay within the boundaries of Baker to Mountain Home to cover that cost. I will tell you that there are teams that travel all over the country. And we'd love to do that, but that's not cost effective. So
What if the state tournament's like in Idaho Falls?
the district will cover the transportation for the bus.
Cover for
Yeah, yeah. District and state.
It's regular, but if somebody goes to state, then they'll cover the all of us. We don't cover, we actually have a procedure, so if they want to take a charter bus, then we calculate that out every year, how much we pay and what they'll have to pay. We make a deal for it.
So from an insurance standpoint, if Stu wants to take the girls and go to Blackfoot, that's not gonna happen.
Well, it can happen. Stu, you better fundraise.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, he's gonna have to.
It's gonna be all.
I mean, I
funded.
might be able to help, but it's
Fundraising.
gonna be.
No, that's gonna be fundraising, because honestly, we don't have to go to Blackfoot. Sometimes there's a couple sports that sometimes you struggle a little bit with that, just because of where tournaments are and things.
Well, the reason I ask that is I look at people's schedules, and the only thing we got to compare to, I mean, you look at some of these 5A schools, we're playing, for basketball, we played 19 games or whatever it was. You know, you look at some of these other schools and even some of the 4A schools, and they played 26 games. And so.
They can't, no, there's a
They're only
limit.
allowed,
I mean, they go and play in tournaments and they get games.
Yeah, they look at tournaments a little different.
So.
It counts as one event, not
Yeah,
per
so I
game.
mean, I'm talking, so that's a fundraising thing that can't come out of the general fund to help with that.
We have just said no. I mean, somehow you have to limit how much you're spending. And we don't get reimbursed for transportation on athletics. So that's actually all general fund. None of that's reimbursed.
Well, so the trip to Blackfoot per se, so you would pay the general fund would pay all the way to Mountain Home.
That's
correct?
right. Okay.
Just the extra distance.
So the
Blackfoot
extra
would be up to the program.
Price per mile.
Gotcha. So it's not just the trip. I mean,
No,
it's
just past Mountain Home.
Which, go ahead.
Well, I had one question, because I remember back when I was in high school, I was in pep band, and we went to every basketball game on the district sent buses. Do we do that anymore? Is that part of the athletic?
Usually we don't send to away games unless it's a playoff game, and then we do.
We went to every game, that's what I just asked.
Our band this year got the opportunity to go play for one of the colleges that traveled and couldn't come, and the college paid $200. I think it cost me $250 for transportation, and then the college paid for $200 of that. So between my music teacher and I, we covered the rest. I want to talk about one other thing with transportation, and that is cars. So Our cars the funds to buy those cars were generated through our driver's ed program. But those cars are not strictly for driver's ed. Those cars are for use in the district. So, for example, we send a couple of special ed teachers to a conference, I can think. They'll call me and they'll use one of those cars because it's much cheaper to send them in the car that way than to pay mileage for 4 teachers or whatever to drive. There are certain events that we are required at the high school that we must go to. We must go to all away varsity football games. We must go to all varsity away basketball games. We must have a rep there. So for example, this year when I had to go to Baker, I took a driver's ed car, and that saved the district quite a bit of money. Because right now I think the fee it's 51 cents a mile. If you'd have paid me to take my own vehicle, it would have cost more than me taking a driver's ed car where I only have to fill it up. The other portion to that is B&W Fuels. It is I fill up at B&W Fuels. That's where our diesel fuel and our fuel contract is through. You guys at some point will go through the bidding process on the fuel bids, and that is who wins it, and that's why we fill it up there. I go up, I fill out the paperwork, I get the key, I fill it up, that paperwork's collected and it goes to Cheryl and so forth. But that is done as a cost saving to the district.
So we've got also a van and a car, and actually tech department has an old van. And
They took one of our old driver's ed cars too for a while. I think they still use.
The driver's ed, when they're doing the driver's ed, they fill it up there too then?
Yes.
Yeah, all of our fuel, except if you're out of town, obviously, all of our fuel is purchased through the contract that we have. And actually, we'll go through that process. We went to a process this last time to bid it every 2 years, just save us some energy and effort. But we actually have one of the better prices for fuel that most districts have because of how we do the bid process. We don't bid it based on, there are people in town that would like us to bid it and won't bid because we do this. They wanted to bid it and say, well, I'll give you $20 off the pump price. Problem with 20 cents off the pump price is that pump price can be high, right? And so you're never getting it. We bid based on the rack price in Boise. So we pay the rack price in Boise plus, I believe it's 7.5 cents, so that we know exactly what the profit of the company is. And quite frankly, if you compare that to other districts that do off the pump prices, we do much better just for cost, because it's actually the rack price in Boise.
The rack price does fluctuate.
The rack price fluctuates. So obviously throughout the year, rack prices go up. And this time of year, they're changing over to summer fuels, your prices go up.
I think that's pretty much where we're at.
I handed out the 100 budget. This is your 100 sheet that goes to Interscholastic Sports. And you'll notice down there just game management. So those are the salaries that are paid for all of the ticket tapers and all that type of stuff. Those monies are reimbursed from the high school to the district.
Basically, they're just going through this.
Yeah, this is just a pass through, essentially what it is. But by doing it this way, we run it through payroll. And that's how you get it through payroll. So as we do that process. We do also, you'll notice another item down here, $9,000 we have a contract with Valor Health for the athletic trainers. We have to have, and that's been a really good partnership. That we did that just a couple of years ago. So, but that's in your packet every month. So anytime you want, if you got questions about it.
If there's any questions I just want to make very clear to you, every dollar down to the penny is accounted for and is run through the system. There's no paying out of cash, there's no under the table, there's no nothing. Everything, every dime for every account, every team, everything is through our system. So anytime a coach, anybody could come in and say, how much did you make on this fundraiser and where did the money go? We can show you down to the penny where it was, how much was earned, and where it went out to. So
My only concern, I appreciate everything everybody's presented tonight. It's very eye-opening to me. My biggest concerns is the cash boxes, and I don't know if that's there's gotta be a better way or a different way, or, I don't know.
The way that they're run now is the way that their predecessors have done
Right.
it for decades, and the way that our auditor dictates that we do it. We are
Well-
completely aware that that is the most dangerous place the money can be taken.
Well, I was thinking some other things as far as, we just take cash. We could take, credit.
They charge for that.
Yeah, but you can do it. I'm just saying it's not something we couldn't do.
For that.
And we do have a card machine.
Okay.
We don't use it a whole lot for athletics because it's more for fees inside, and the busiest time of the year is in August when we're doing registration. Sometimes it's easier for a parent to use a card but we do have access to that.
So is it not feasible to use it for entering athletics? I mean, someone
Well,
that gets there.
just this last year, we asked Mr. Loftus to actually put Wi-Fi out there to even connect to it and have a separate Wi-Fi, not something the kids can log on to, because then you run into that. I mean, that's actually been a big issue, is it even working outside at the gates efficiently? So,
I'm thinking of the parents that come, they forget their money and
Sure.
stuff.
Yeah, the guy without his checkbook.
Can you run into it how many times?
All the time, today 3 times.
Yeah.
But you'll find out, they'll mail it to you. They will give it, they will come back. The next time they will pay you double.
That's never been an issue. I want people at the games. I want the little girls cheerleading. I want the Optimus football playing at
Oh, I
half.
understand that.
I want those things. I want the activities to be a community activity. And
I must say that I went to the cheer contest with Heather, and that was the biggest zoo getting in there that I've ever ran into in my life. I mean, you get an old person trying to find an app on a cell phone to show you something, I couldn't figure it out. I had to talk to a cheerleader.
But if you have some ideas, we're more than willing to look at them and try them.
So I actually want to put Rich on the spot a little bit. So is there anything that you can bring to us? I mean, you've been around that football program in Big City for 20 plus years. Is there anything that we can do different? Is there?
So, not only have I coached 21 years, there's a few, you know this, my wife used to be an athletic director before we moved to Idaho. And so I would say this, everything that's going on in terms of the financials, the purchasing process, everything we do at Emmett High School is fundamentally the exact same as every school I've ever been at. The money boxes, the requisition forms, how the principal approves it, it's all essentially the exact same. So there's nothing really different there. In terms of how you're handling the gate, many times I would have to go pick my wife up from gates and drive her to the bank afterwards and all that stuff. And so I'm very aware how she did that. What her school did was they went out and they did the ticket thing. But the tickets are very expensive. It's a huge cost. She did find a company who gave them a discount on that. I asked her, I said, how do you prove if there's 1,000, because it was the 40th biggest district in the United States. So they were dealing with thousands of people. I said, how do you prove if you saw 1,000 human beings in the stands that you sold 1,000 tickets? And she said, I have never been able to do that. There is no way to account that 100%. And she said, I've never seen it. I've never heard it done. It's not done. I said, how would you do it if you were just rambunctiously determined to get it done? She said, what their district did is everybody over the age of 65 went to the district office and got a badge, a card, and they showed it to the gate, and that's how they got it. Everybody else bought a ticket or they signed in on a pass. I said, what about coach's wife comes to the gate, blah, blah, blah. She said, we can't account for this. She said, there's always a discrepancy in how many butts are in the stands and how many tickets are sold. I did ask her, I said, how would you do it if money was no option? She said, I would have one set of tickets for the people that pay full price, another set of tickets for the people that are elderly and getting a discount, another set of tickets for kids that are students. She said, then there would be a pass list for this, a pass list for this, a pass list for this. I said, does any district you've ever worked at do that? She said, no. I can tell you from experience, no district I've ever worked at has done that. It would probably double what you're charging at the gate, or you would have to double the number of workers at the gate to get that kind of oversight. It can be done. It's just very expensive, and there's a lot more workers going to have to be added to it. In terms of how the district does things, I can speak from my account. I'm guessing I have one of the bigger accounts at the school. I fundraise significantly. I have a large account right now. I have a lot of reasons for that. The money comes in, I have to turn it all into Brandy. It all has to be verified out. I have to have the fundraiser approved before I ever start it. And then once the money, I want to go get it, essentially I have to follow all those processes, have signatures, the money has to all be itemized and accounted out. So I would say how we make money and how we spend money, I don't see any fundamental flaw in any of it. It's what every district does. In terms of the gate situation, you can change it, but you need to understand that if you're gonna change it, you're going to double the workers, double the expense, it's going to get expensive. To get, and I get what you're saying over there, Terry, you can't, right now, you can't prove, at any district in America I've ever worked at, you cannot prove beyond a shadow of a doubt, we sold this many tickets, but I saw this many people in the stands. And no district is able to provide that 100%. We could get better, but to get better, there will be much more cost.
That's not my concern. My concern is if we sold 1,000 tickets, do we have that money in the till? I'm not worried about what's in the stands. I'm just worried about if we collected for X amount of people, did we get Y amount of money? That you know,
So
There's a balance there between the two.
yeah, and so a lot of times, being a head football coach, I was asked to go to the non-revenue sports and try to help keep their boxes. And I asked other athletic directors one time, I said, how do you know that I'm not just taking half of the money home with me at night from this box? And his answer back to me was very telling. He said, because I hire good people that I have to trust. And he said, there has to be a trust factor in there. And he said, you can't ever really prove every last nickel and dime. You have to trust you hired good people. And I mean, that was the answer from South Carolina. And so it's not the answer I think everybody wants to hear, but I think trust is a huge part of it. You have to trust that the people you're sending out there are doing a good job. I mean, when you get right down to it, you have to trust that as a head football coach, I'm not doing illegal things with your kids. You're not going to verify it every day. You have to trust you hired the right guy. When we do fundraising, you have to trust that I'm doing fundraisers correctly and I'm turning all the money. I mean, there's a certain trust. Their oversight process is as extensive as any school I've ever worked at. It might be better here than some of the schools I've worked at. Probably is. It's just, there's no way to, every penny can't be accounted for down to the last minute of every day. It's impractical. That would be my answer. Does that answer your, I'm perfectly happy to answer anything else anybody wants to know, but that's my professional educated opinion of it.
You answered it.
Any receipts that come, or anybody that comes in and pays for a yearbook or something like that in your office gets a receipt?
Correct. And that's again in Infinite Campus, and then it's also tracked in our accounting software.
I have a question. With the statute of 33357, I noticed on the last, this year, the expenditures are up on the website where it has, you know, the check number and what it was for and explains what the money was for. Well, according to this statute, it's gotta go back to 2011. Can we do that?
I'm working. I
Okay.
did get last year's on there.
I just wanna make sure, cause.
Yes. Last year's, so
public will be-
17, 18 is on there, and now.
I saw that too.
And now I'm digging, yes, and I'll just keep going.
EPS, it's gonna take us some time, and yeah, we've got calls into them. We can go back ourselves so many years, but if we wanna go back like that far, we've gotta go back into them, and they've gotta help us retrieve that information.
I got it too.
I understand what you're reading in that law. I will tell you that, and I went back today to try to find something. I have not found direction from the State Department or any other organization from that law from day one that ever said that student accounts had to be a part of it. And that's why there wasn't a high school in Idaho that did this, you know, so we're not doing anything different or unusual than any other high school in Idaho. As a matter of fact, I just read a deal today from the State Department that came out 3 years ago on it. And Cheryl and I were looking at this, you know, what they wanted us to do. High school accounts were never a part of that conversation. Now, I understand that people think we need to do it from, you know, that's what the law says.
Well,
Maybe it does, but I think that we're not behind it, well, we're behind the game. We'll try to get up as much as we can. But that was never the guidance we ever got during this process since
Well, it makes
2011.
me a little nervous because the board is not you liable, we're liable.
Oh, trust me, I'm liable.
No, the governing body is liable. So I appreciate your hard work.
Yeah,
So
but you
with
also
that-
have to understand something. This will cost us a bunch of money to get it done. And we're probably gonna have to start scanning stuff and, you know, there's, because it isn't all
Well, I'm
electronic.
not saying it has to be up tomorrow. I'm saying.
So.
And what I'm saying
I'm
is.
not sure we can go back that far, and I'm not sure that anybody would ever require us.
Well, it says here, Mr. Rush.
I'm aware of what it says there, but what I do know is it has never been part of the guidance.
I'm not focusing on other school districts. One's enough. And I'm focusing on the Emmett one.
Okay.
And.
Ms. Harris.
So what I'll probably do is put a budget item in there if we do this, so the board knows what it's. So the board can decide, do we want to spend that money
Yeah.
on that?
What I would like to see, because I'm preparing for this meeting, I'm going through trying to find it, and all I could find was expenditures. Now, I finally talked to you, and you informed me that it was in the February packet. I'm wondering if there's a way we can get that on that website, maybe in place of.
So on our
expenditures.
accounting software, I can go back and print out from last year. That's how I was able to put that whole. So now I just have to go through files. It's just gonna take me a little bit of time, but I can go back and then I just have to scan them
Yeah,
and
well,
upload them.
what I'm getting at is what you've already done is on the February packet.
You have to remember on that, we have to redact that, so that takes time as well.
But
So
it is
that-
done already. Is that what I'm saying?
That one is,
Yeah,
but going back
okay,
is not, because we have
Okay,
to.
Heather,
rewrite it.
follow me here. What I'm saying is, I had trouble finding it.
Okay.
What I'm wondering is if we can put that what was in that
So you
packet
want all this in
on
one?
with the financial information there where we've got our
On our
expenditures.
district page. So on the district page, not the high school.
Yeah, yeah. You see what I'm saying?
On those financials, even the district expenditures aren't there. It's the checks that we've written that is on the financial page.
Yeah.
The other
And if
expenditures
we
for
could
the
put
district
that,
budget and the rest of that is what we put in the packet every month.
but as we put that packet together, if we could put that in that same area on the website, it'd make it so people could find it like me. Because I
We
looked all
might
over.
be able to do that. I'd have to do some exploring. And here's the other problem with that is that there's been a bunch of lawsuits against districts that it has to be accessible to the disabled. So we can't just drop anything on that website. It has to go through a process that is pretty extensive. And Twin's been one of the ones that's been sued a couple times over it.
Okay.
So we have to be careful about how we do that. So we can add that stuff, I think, but it's.
And we're working on it.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's
You have-
okay.
It was answered.
It's been answered.
We're working on that, and I'm not gonna say we're gonna have it in a week, I'm not gonna say we're gonna have it in a month, but there's a lot of days these ladies don't get lunch. They're working through lunch,
I'm
and
just
so
volunteering, so.
I will take responsibility. I've asked them to work on that, and when they can find the time, and we will work on it. Brandy and I talked the other day, and honestly, her time slows down dramatically when school's out, and the 2 or 3 weeks she has to put in. And that's gonna be our focus, is to get those things caught up and so forth. This is new to us, so it's.
Yeah, everything's new to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Well, Mr. Rush, on having access, the disabled having access, what does that look like?
It's quite a process. It's kind of amazing. And Crystal Vaughn is the one that's done the research on it.
But what's on the expenditure page now is
I
accessible?
believe is accessible, yes. But in other words, she can't, like I'll say, let's just put up this PDF, and she'll say, I've got to rerun that in a different way, so it's accessible. So it takes a different process to go through.
And by disabled, it's more like hearing or seeing impaired. So that it as if they have a reader reading it, it reads it, and then it's not, instead of, we just see that it says, click here or whatever, it has to be able to read that and then tell them it's going to another page and all that process.
Right.
I got a general question. I was looking at the expenses online today, and one thing stuck out to me, and I was at one of the clubs, I can't even remember which club it was, but they bought an iWatch for somebody. And,
It was a fundraiser,
oh, so that was
so
the
they
prize?
sold tickets.
Gotcha.
For-
Just a
yes.
question.
If you come to the high school now and walk into the atrium, we have a huge paddle board that is hanging on the wall that is a fundraiser for another group.
Who's out for?
That is for freshman class and sophomore class.
I saw that, it was kind of a, wow, okay. I don't have an iWatch. I guess I could go buy a ticket.
But
You could buy a ticket.
yeah, and I review everything, but I don't micromanage everything, if that makes sense. When she brings me the folder with checks and purchase orders and requisitions and everything, I go through them. But I don't micromanage. I don't have time to micromanage over 100, 150 accounts. They're changing all the time, but I go through everything, every dime that comes in and every dime that goes out, I know what it is.
I would like to ask you a question, just since we're all in the same room together, but for the health of an organization, I know it's been tossed around a little bit. Overstepping, overstepping, and you kind of threw it out there at one of the board meetings. You said if anyone ever has a question, and I hate beating the dead horse, but like in city council, department heads, sometimes they felt a little bit personally attacked or something. But again, it's the council member's responsibility to ask questions. So if, it's good too to have it in an open forum, but if there's like stuff that we could run to ground personally, do we have an open invitation and it's not deemed?
Absolutely. I think I've said that.
There's just sort of some uneven ground that we're trying to establish, and it's been kind of flooding.
If you have a question and you come in, more than likely, I'm not going to answer it. I'm going to turn you over to Brandy. And she'll
My door
answer it.
is always open.
Yes.
Right.
But
It's
yes,
all about
our
it's all
doors-
about building trust and relationships,
Mhm.
and
Right.
if we're not all on the same team, and daggers are being thrown from both sides, then we're never going to move forward. Is essentially it. And then also, I'd like to say, as far as the cash boxes and stuff, my personal business is a cash business. So yeah, you go into that, and it's a hard lesson to learn. Is when you say, who do you trust? The short answer is you don't trust anybody with the cash business. But over time, you establish rapport with people, which you're speaking of. And there's peer pressure too. There's other eyes and ears. And if people if they're determined to steal money, they're going to find a way. But over time, they're going to be sniffed out, essentially. So.
And that's kind of why I said at most of our ticket stations, there's two people.
Mm-hmm.
So there's eyes on. Not that Kim goes, I'm watching Brandy, but but we have multiple people there almost in most cases.
Right.
So
I trust that you do, yeah.
But you're right, that's the issue, is that there's no way to 100%.
Oh yeah, we're all human, and you don't know what
Right.
someone's motivation and angle is.
I think this is an important point to make too, is just about the whole trust factor.
Uh-huh.
Like a week and a half ago, one of our kids broke a weight bar. He dropped it on a bench. He broke the whole end housing off. We've welded it like 68 times. It's dead. It's time to euthanize it, right?
Uh-huh.
And so I went up, and Brandy has a way to get Amazon Prime free shipping. I went up there. I said, we broke this bar. I need one ordered. I need it express ship. Get it here quickly. It's $200. Filled it all out. Boom. The next day it's ordered. 2 days later it's here. That's a classic example of if Wade Carter has to stop me and ask, Rich, why do you need to spend $200? He might as well fire me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? To your trust point, like it's $200, which I understand is real money, but in the course of a day, that's why I'm a head football coach, is that when that stuff breaks, I don't need to run up there and have a 15-minute conversation, because Wade doesn't have time for that either. Now if I want to go spend $7,000, I'm pretty confident he's gonna call me in and say, Rich, what are you doing spending $7,000? $200 on something, if he wants to know, he's gonna ask, but he's gonna see it all from Brandy too. And I think that's a great point to make. It's all gonna bear out in the wash.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of accountability there, but there's also a certain amount of, it just makes common sense to trust people.
Sure.
And that kind of stuff, and I'll tell you this, 3 times in 21 years, I've actually had to go to the principal's office and say, here's what I wanted to spend the money for. And they're always massively large purchases where we're talking, close to 5 figures. And right? Obviously, we're gonna come in and have a conversation about that, but 99.9% of the time, it just doesn't happen.
Right.
And we get hit with huge costs. If you guys attended a basketball game, you know our scoreboard had issues this year during games. To replace those 2 scoreboards, we're probably looking at $25,000. That's $25,000 that we want to take care of ourselves. We don't want to come to the district and say we need money to replace scoreboards. We want to be self-sufficient when we can. So.
I'd like to say a few things. I'm a new guy on this board, but I'm savvy with the district. I'm savvy with the community. And I've been asked about this account, and I said, as far as I know, there is no accountability because I haven't been privy to the information. I want to thank you for the opportunity to sit here and have this conversation, this two-way exchange, so that I have a better understanding. So when I get queried on it, I can at least tell them how to cow eat the cabbage. Now, I can tell you for sure, our community does not trust the school district. And we need to have more conversations like this. If there's other things out there that this board needs to know, get us in a room like this and talk to us. Because if we don't know, the imagination takes over.
Right. And if you get questions, come to me. My door is always open.
But in our training, we have 1 employee.
You know what?
So,
You may go to the
So-
principal anytime you want to.
okay.
There's the instruction.
Okay.
I mean,
Very.
Ronnie came to me 2 weeks ago, asked me a question. My door is open. I'm not.
Well, I mean, so if my neighbor, Mrs. Smith, has a question about the high school accounts, I'm like, maybe you need to call Mr. Carter, set up a meeting.
Or say, let me check into it. I'll find out for you.
Mhm.
Give me a call.
So I don't have to go to here to here.
No, give me a call. So, okay.
Again, if I might throw something out there, I'm very new here, obviously, I've only lived here since June. I've been asked 3 separate times by people in the community, what do I do with the gate receipts for football and what do I do with the cash boxes on Friday night? And I have to put my jaw back up, the fact that they actually think that I take that every Friday, and I have to begin explaining the process of, I have never, and the closest I get to a cash box is to wave at Brandy as I walk 30 feet around her cash box and go nowhere near it, because that's not my money. But there are people in our community who literally think, I think this kind of goes back to some of what you're saying, Terry, there's people that think, as the head football coach, that on Friday night, there's like 20 grand and I'm just walking around with money falling out of my pockets. And I have to educate them and say, it doesn't work that way. It never works that way. It's never gonna work that way. I don't touch that. Basically, we make all that money on Friday night, which you've heard tonight, most of it disappears before it's ever even there because we have to pay officials and all that. It goes in, I get a line item budget back from the principal. That's how close I get to the gate receipts. But I think to your point and to your point, what I see as what I think is I have absolutely no enemies in this town except the ones I naturally make from losing football games. I sit here and listen to this conversation and realize this is all good. I'm trying to figure out, people keep telling me, oh, there's all this negativity. There's a board simply asking, show us the process. Well, if you don't ask for the process, that's a problem. And you have a district who just sat here and showed you the process. So that's good. It was positive both ways. I think the big issue I see is there's an educational, that may not be the right word, there's an information gap. People don't understand this isn't how the sausage is made. And I think if we're all telling them that, a lot of these problems that I keep hearing about in the community are not really problems. People ask me all the time, I get Mike Schroeder questions as much as I take oxygen into my lungs. And I'm like, I can tell you all the things that you think did or did not happen, which I have nothing to do with. I can just tell you about this process. And this process has not changed. There is no football coach taking money because we never touch it. But again, I've lived here less than a year and I've been asked 3 times, point blank, what do you do with money on Friday night? I'm like, it's Brandy. Brandy does that. And then Wade gives me money,
It's all your fault, Brandy.
Yeah,
It's all on you, Brandy.
The one other thing I would just tell the board and just remind you that you can share with people in the community is several of our athletic programs are losing money programs. Okay. Football and boys basketball make money, but there are other programs that don't make money after you pay for officials and those kinds of things. they either break even or whatever, and so yes, Rich would love to have the Gates money, but Rich understands I have to support 13 other programs too. So, okay.
Rich also understands if you got all the gate, you get all the bill.
Rich understands, Rich doesn't.
I actually had a coach come in and ask me that. They said, I want all the gate for football. I said, have at it. You might want to start fundraising. And I broke down, Kim and I broke down, here's what officials cost you, here's what transportation costs you, here's what uniforms cost you, here's what this costs you. And I said, you might want to start fundraising because you're in the hole. So. Thank you for calling me, and I appreciate this, so. And like I said, my door is always open, my phone's always there, my email's always there. I'd love to have you come in the building.
Thank you.
I'm good.
Anything else?
Good.
Appreciate you coming.
Are you good? Any other questions?
I'm always good.
Other than we killed like a whole tree. We're good.
But hey, you got your information, right?
You want the tree back?
I do want your notes if you took me.
No, really.
So Rich, you're not buying anyone's mom's cars for recruiting or anything?
What's that?
You're not buying LeBron's mom a car or
No, not quite.
Only if LeBron comes here.
Right, that's what I mean.
Which we're gonna charge for that, and we will have ticket boxes.
Okay.
We need to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Second by Bill. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
He took my name.
Okay, understand.
Thank you guys for
I'm
coming.
hungry.
And helping us with this.
Don't have anything. I just pay up.